We got a bright future ahead of us.
We going to Jack the Rapper.
Meech, that's a Miami killer.
Think you deserve to have a free pass in my city?
The world is my oyster.
What's up, YouTube? It's your boy Mark Dark, and I'm back with another video. If you're new, if you love BMF, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, like the video, and leave your theories, comments, everything down below. Now today, we're going to be talking about BMF Season 3, Episode 3. This is the recap. Now I'm going to try my best to focus on all the key points in this episode. If I miss anything, you guys let me know down below. We saw a whole lot of action in Episode 3. We saw, of course, the brawl at the Jack the Rapper weekend. It was crazy. And of course, Detective Bryant, he has linked up with Henrietta. And it seems like he's not about to, lay down, and he wants to go up against Terry and Meech no matter what, which we already knew what time it was. We know he ain't about to go. So it's going to continue to be issues with them as the season continues to air out. And we know that Meech most likely is going to continue to have issues with Glock, Rodney Greeny Green, a guy that probably should have been taken out, and of course, Stacks, who we talked about this week, him and Rodney, as far as not being trusted. So, in my opinion, they proved in this episode once again that they cannot be trusted, and they're going to need to be neutralized eventually, because I got a feeling it ain't over yet. But let's hop right into this recap. And in this episode, I like how they showed us the history between Meech and his pops, the connection they had with music. We finally get to see the two hang out. We know Meech, he needs to use his dad in order to get that, new home down there in Atlanta. But it was good to see those two together, especially after all the stuff that they've been through. Now, after they give us like the flashback of Meech and his pops, we get to see Meech. He's going back to a spot, and all of a sudden, he is being robbed. And if you zoom in, we can tell that it was that Clyde character, who of course is a part of Remy's crew. And I told you guys in my quick thoughts, early impressions, I believe Stacks just let the people in. I believe it was a complete setup, and he is acting like they got robbed. But in reality, he helped them do it. But that's just me. We know in this episode that Stacks was kind of pissed off, talking about let's get revenge and all that. But I would not be surprised if that was just a front to make it seem like he had nothing to do with it. Now we get to the Platinum Palace, and Meech finally has a conversation with Angel about the whole setup and everything with the MKs. And she tells him she had nothing to do with that at all. And she's trying to get this money. It's Jack the Rapper weekend, so she gotta go. So Meech understands that it's not her, and we already know what time it is. If it ain't her, most likely it gotta be Rodney Greeny Green, because every time he's having a conversation with Angel, he pops up or whatever. And we know Meech, he's short on the money because of what happened with the robbery. So he don't have, the cash, at least all of it, at least right now. But Rodney ends up giving him, the history of Jack the Rapper weekend and how all the top dogs come in over this weekend. And that means it's a whole lot of money. So of course, he wants to take advantage of it. Now, we get to Terry. He's having a conversation with the boys about business. We know things ain't looking too good with Henrietta stealing clients. And we know Terry ends up getting a conversation from Markeisha. Markeisha, she misses Terry, y'all. She wants to get her cheeks clapped. I mean, what's new? But Terry's like, nah, I'm good. You know what I'm saying? I got business to take care of. You do what you do. So y'all know she gonna continue to try to get at Terry throughout this episode. Now we know it was not the MKs that robbed Meech. We know it was Remy's boy Clyde or whatever. We slowed it down, and of course they was talking about how Clyde was coming into the shop all dressed up, wearing expensive clothing and all that stuff. Now, of course, Stacks wants to make it seem like he wants payback. He wants to get back at them, and Meech ain't really doing nothing. We also know that Meech ends up pawning those Rolexes that he had in order to pay his crew. So they was taken care of. But Stacks, he was kind of pissed off, and he thought that some of the crew would roll with him. But they said, nah, they good. They're going to roll with Meech, including Little Baby's character Payne, because Meech, he is taking care of them no matter what. And we know Meech's game plan. He wants to go to Jack the Rapper weekend in order to expand the organization and to get more manpower. Now, we get to Terry. He's having a conversation with his crew, and of course, they're more loyal to Meech, and they ain't feeling how Terry's been running the whole organization. The product is not coming in as quickly as they thought it was going to be, and of course, a lot of these guys end up walking out. Now, luckily, Terry's boy Diz was loyal to Terry because we know he has connections to Henrietta. He's over there working with her, so he said, you know what? go over there and I want you to get intel. Let me know exactly how she's operating, because if he knows how she's operating, he is able to stop her moves. So that's exactly what he plans on doing in this episode. Now, Lucille is having a conversation with Estelle, and they're talking about the doctor, y'all. And of course, she is telling Lucille she needs to take advantage of this opportunity. Charles is down in Atlanta, you know, basically home alone. So go ahead and kick it with the doctor, have a good old time, because you do not want to regret this opportunity. I know Lucille was kind of in her head, whatever, because she says, look, she ain't fully divorced, but we know she ended up taking Estella's advice and she kicked it with the doctor later on in the episode. Now, we know Detective Veronica Jen and Detective Amberson, they're keeping tabs on Cuts because they know Cuts was most likely the guy that took out Saint because somebody gave them a tip of his car leaving the crime scene. Now, we get to Charles and he finally finds out the real reason that Meech wants him down in Atlanta, because he wants him to help sign over this new house, which they got fake pay stubs and everything. And Charles is like, man, hell nah, ain't no way I'm doing this. And we know they end up having a disagreement. We know Meech was telling Charles, like, look, it's no different from you stealing cable and all that stuff when we was little. I mean, you did all types of stuff. And Charles said he did those things, for survival, for the family. And Meech said, look, it's no different here. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to make sure that I'm good. My old spot got broken into and robbed. So, I'm basically trying to take care of myself. Charles said he has to think about this because it is a big decision. You do not want to mess around getting caught. But we know later on in this story, that's exactly what ends up happening. Now, it was Detective Bryant's idea to move product in this ambulance truck because no one is going to look for it, right? Right in plain sight. Now, we know the game plan did not work because Terry got the drop and he sent Hoop and Cuts to go down there and eliminate the threat. Now, while they're doing this, we know Cuts ends up getting shot by Detective Bryant, and it ain't looking too good. Now, law enforcement ends up showing up. Detective Veronica Jen and her partner, they pop up to the party because they was already telling Cuts. Now, Detective Bryant, he's kind of shook, like, man, they here. I got to figure out how I'm going to handle this. Detective Veronica Jens end up getting shot by Twan, and he was about to take her out, but Detective Bryant ended up taking out Twan. I mean, he eliminated this guy with no problem at all. It did not seem like he thought twice about it. He looked, Veronica Jen in her face, and you can tell she's like, man, why the hell are you even here in the first place? Why was you even in that truck? What's going on? Now, of course, Henrietta, she is pissed off when she hears about the news. Twan, he is gone. He is up out of here. On top of that, Cut, he ends up being taken in by law enforcement. Hoop was able to get away, but we know Henrietta, she wants payback. So she tells Detective Bryant to tell her everything that he knows about Terry, because he basically put all the blame on BMF. So this is where we see Children's Services come in and they question Terry and LaWanda about the living situation of the child, like what's going on. And of course, they're under investigation. So now it's a chance that they may lose their child because of Detective Bryant and of course, Henrietta seeking revenge. Now, we get to Jack the Rapper weekend. Of course, they give us like the history lesson of this black radio music convention that they had back in the day. A very classic type of event. But we know it's some haters in the house. Clyde, he is there from Remy's crew. We know Glock, he is there as well. So y'all know it's some tension up in the air. Now, Charles, he is happy as hell because he's always wanted to go to an event like this, especially, the history that's surrounded by this event with the music. Now, Meech, he understands that his dad loves music, but he does not want his father there because he knows and understands the people at this event, they're not the safest and nicest people. So he wants to make sure that his dad is good at all costs, but we know that's most likely not going to be the case. Now, in this episode, they set up the whole storyline with Meech. And of course, this character, his name is Jay Pushup. We know him as Jay Bo in the real life story. And we know he's them talking about St. Louis and all that stuff, the pipeline. We know Meech, he wants to come down there to make sure that everything is good. And I believe we're going to see that in the future episode, the whole St. Louis storyline with Meech trying to expand down there with this Jay Pushup character. Now, Lucille is kicking it with the doctor. And look, they having a good old time. They reminiscing about their childhood, and he is basically doing whatever he has to do to make sure he gets the opportunity to get Lucille back. He wants her, right? And I mean, he is pulling all the strings. I mean, he had popcorn balls ordered, shipped there, just in case he got the opportunity to hang out with Lucille, and he understands that she loved those. And of course, we know he writes her a check for the whole bake sale thing, and I believe it was about 10 grand. So yes, he ain't playing around, and Lucille knows that she's going to have to make a decision very, very soon. And we also know that Charles, he's going to be upset once he sees that check when he gets back home from Atlanta. Now Glock, he is slowly but surely making his move on Meech. He understands that Charles is Meech's father because of the conversation that he had with him. He was already lurking, watching Meech's every move while he was there. And this is probably the last thing that Meech wants to happen. Now we end up seeing Meech have a conversation with Tupac. And I was talking about this weeks ago when I told you guys it's a chance that we may see, somebody play Tupac in this show. And we end up seeing it in episode 3. They end up talking about beef, Cali weed, and of course, Jack the Rapper weekend. I mean, they just had a very mutual conversation and it seemed cool. Now, when that brawl broke out, they had Tupac in there banging along with everybody else. Now, Hoop, he goes back to Terry to let him know what happened to Cuts and that things ain't looking too good. Detective Bryant, he's working with Henry. So now Terry has to figure out what they need to do and they have to think very, very quickly. Now, Tina, she understands that this Solomon character ain't who he's saying he is. He is actually Glock, right? And Charles, he's kicking it with him. They talking music and all that stuff. So Meech is like, look, Dad, you gotta go. Get him up out of here. Charles said, you know what? Hell nah. What's going on? I'm sticking around. I'm not going nowhere. Him and Glock have a conversation. They go back and forth. We know Glock does not want Meech there, talking about you're not about to get a free pass in my city and all that stuff. It's crazy because we know Meech, he was really just trying to do business with Glock on a good note, no issues at all. But apparently that's not going to be the case. Now Glock ends up mentioning how he owns the security there, just like he owns the pimp that cleans your money. So Meech now understands that it was Rodney Greeny Green, being the one that set him up or whatever. And now he knows he has to handle him once he gets back to the club. Now a brawl breaks out. Meech is in there throwing hands. Tina, she was in there throwing stuff. I mean, it was going crazy. Meech knocks out Glock's right-hand man, and then he sees Clyde, he dropped him off, and then we see Charles, he knocked somebody out. So they in there banging, letting them know that the Midwest don't play. Now, they end up getting up out of there because, the Red Dogs came in and shut everything down, and once that happens, it's pretty much over. Now, Markeisha and Terry, they're hooking up. She probably wanted to get her cheeks clapped once again, but Lucille comes banging on the door. She's upset, pissed off, telling him that he needs to handle this whole, children's services thing because it's getting real, real serious. She told him about how she was in foster care when she was growing up and it was not the best thing. And she wants to make sure that he is doing what he has to do to protect his family at all costs. Terry tells her, don't worry about it. It's going to be okay. Now, Meech and Charles, they have another conversation about the event. Of course, Charles was pissed off because he was really looking forward to going to that music event, but we know how things played out. And Meech tells him he's not giving up on his dreams and stuff like that. He's trying to take care of his family. They kind of go back and forth or whatever. But Meech just explains like, look, he needs his father's help as far as that, new house. And he's basically doing what he is doing because all the things that he saw his family go through and that he's the first Flannery that could control his own destiny. So that's what he, is thinking. We know Charles ends up agreeing to help him out as far as the new home. And finally, we're going to see these two have a positive relationship as the series continues to air out, but we know things was not the best at the very beginning. Now, we get to Henrietta. She's kicking it with this white girl and, of course, her cousin. And her cousin, he's very upset about what happened to Twan, talking about it should have been me and all that stuff. Now, she ends up sending the white girl over there to calm him down, topping him off. And she tells him, like, look, don't worry about that. I'm going to handle it. So we know she really wants to seek that revenge and get payback on Terry and BMF. Now we get to Rodney Greeny Green and we get the real Rodney Greeny Green. You know what I'm saying? The real pimp version, because he's running his mouth to Angel, telling her she's not nothing and all that. As I told you guys, being very disrespectful. And then all of a sudden, Meech and Duffy, they come out of nowhere. They beat that boy down, pull him out of the car. And we know Duffy, he ended up sticking him with that glass bottle, had that boy out there leaking. And Meech was saying that he's going to cut his water off. I'm thinking, well, you might as well do that right now because this man is talking. And if they talking, they still going to be a problem. So I'm expecting him to try to get some type of revenge later on in the show, especially against Angel. But I'm glad that Meech found out the truth that this guy was working with Glock, which makes all the sense in the world. We talked about this earlier on in the week about, maybe it's Rodney Greeny Green or Stacks. Well, we got our answers. I say we still can't trust Stacks at all just based off what he was doing in this episode alone. Now, Charles finally gets back home, and Lucille, she ain't, feeling the best. It's crazy because, Charles, he was all happy. He came in there, moving and dancing with a lot of energy. But she tells him about Terry and Children's Services and how somebody called and made, some false reports about, the living of the house and all that stuff. And basically they can take away everything, the kids, the unborn child, when the child is born. I mean, it's a lot going on. Now, she goes to bed. Charles sees that check that the doctor wrote, and his energy goes out the window. I mean, look at his face. He is pissed off like, man, she's getting this type of money from this guy. And I know he was in his feelings. I cannot wait to see the conversation that he's going to have with Lucille about this topic of discussion. Now we get to Kevin, and of course he is getting beat up. He is getting beat up, and Detective Brian, he's upset. He's pissed off, telling him, look, just keep fighting or whatever. You're going to be okay. I got the best lawyer or whatever. I'm going to help you out. Don't worry about it. But we know deep down inside, this got to be eating him up because he wants his boy up out of there. But we know most likely that's not going to be the case. Now, we get the Angel and Meech, and she's telling, Meech that, look, Rodney Greeny Green, of course, he did all this stuff for me. He is right. I'm not nothing without him. Meech tells her, like, look, you packing out the club and all that stuff. You need to know your worth. Like, come on. Rodney Greeny Green, yes, he did help you out, but you're more than what you're talking about. So we're going to continue to see this connection grow between the two. I just got that funny feeling that Rodney Greeny Green, he is going to seek revenge, and most likely Angel may mess around and get hurt in all of this. Now we get to the end of the episode. It's Terry and Detective Bryant, and Terry tells him, like, look, since you out here doing street work, since you working with Henry, how about you work with the top dog? How about you work with us or whatever? And we can put both of our resources together and we can be good. Now Detective Bryant is like, hell nah, I'm good, and y'all my problem. You and your brother should be locked up, not my son, and he ain't going. Terry tells him, well, if that's the way that you want to go, just know you're going to get ran over. So Detective Bryant tells him, well, I guess I'm going to have to just get ran over. So he's not going. He don't care about what Terry is doing. He wants to take them down no matter what. And this whole, beef between the two is just heating up. It's going to continue to grow and grow and grow until finally Detective Bryant gets what he wants. And that is take down Meech and, of course, Terry. But we gonna see, man. You guys, y'all let me know. What do you think about episode 3? I can't wait to see how Meech and Terry are going to handle all these different enemies, especially seeing how Rodney Greeny Green was a snake the whole time, which we pretty much predicted. I also want to see what's going to happen with Stax, Glock, and of course, Henrietta. Now, I will be dropping the episode 4 What to Expect video for you guys over the weekend, so I want you guys to stay tuned for that. But I want to thank you guys once again for all the love, all the support, and I will catch y'all on the next one. But let me get up on out of here, man. It's your boy Mark Dark. I'm out. Peace.